How are you?
Hi, wait, Martha, good today.
But you look all.
Here are some markers, you can make a name.
Good. I'm good.
I know, I was hoping for a shirt on it, so.
I
know, you gotta bring your lunch, I guess. It's a BYOL, bring your own lunch. No, I'll eat after.
Usually they serve lunch.
They don't want to. I'm talking. I have a little snack.
That's good because you're.
Perfect. Martha asked me to sit to her right, I think, or left, you know what?
So we have one more down there.
Yeah.
No, I warned you.
Oh, you did? Wait, it's a 15th. No.
Nothing I did.
Wow.
No,
This is like Sunday or Monday? This is. No, 15.
Monday, yeah. Well, everybody's the matter, they did much easier to find.
These were all the time.
Do I have a couple of each of those all?
Here.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? Good, how are you? How was your Thanksgiving? Very nice.
I went with, doing family. We served 600 people.
I know, lovely.
You want to see something?
Wow, way to go.
What's that?
That's spectacular.
The banquet from,
Well,
a JFS.
Look, Susan, she takes such pain.
It was the most beautiful banquet that I ever seen. 600 people. And everybody was. Wow. Amazing. They brought from Century Village and then I met the people.
Okay.
It's gorgeous. Coming late. Oh, she just got back. She came on Sunday. Yeah.
Good, how are you? I'm good.
Okay.
I know what to do.
Oh, let me move this little. Well, actually, that's not so bad. I kind of like that.
I have right here.
Well, then you can't. Okay. Let me move this around. And then we're gonna get started.
I hope that, I hope I did too. They said, they say, "Hey, Rose Brown, how are you?" But guess what? You have a nice hat?
That's me.
Lily, you have a nice
I
hat?
have mine.
I want to be sure.
Did Rose-
Say what?
Yes.
I want to be sure.
I know.
Double checking. Hey. Nobody's here today.
Quiet.
They must not know that you're on.
Nobody.
That's the only thing I can think of.
No, I think, we're.
Post Thanksgiving.
Still coming back.
People are still getting back. Next year for lunch and learn, can I have an open to have
And it all
3 more
comes in.
sessions of Mozart? We can, yeah. Because she was wonderful, but
against it.
we were like too short.
Yeah.
Good idea, we can do it back to back, like 2 months in a row.
Great.
Yeah, why not?
Usually.
Sounds good. Hi, Anita, good to see you. All right, everyone, let's get started. 1 hour. 1 hour, 12 to 1. Okay, everybody, I know there's no coffee and this is the perfect day for it. I don't know. Let me, everyone, people want it? Oh, yeah. Hold on 1 second. let me see.
Sorry that
It'll
I
be
have
after
a
Thanksgiving.
small pot.
Sorry that I go to take my picture, but I have
A small pot.
I'm going with my right eye.
It's really fun.
The glasses look nice on you. Glasses look nice on you.
I think.
I like it. But you're hiding, right? Unless I'm used to sunglasses, I know.
I've had, for 2 weeks now, I had one before.
No.
And I went to the doctor.
I voted.
Yes.
2 more weeks.
You were there Saturday.
Friday I come, and then I was Sunday for the
But I
oratorio.
did not forget to.
Yeah,
meet you.
I was there. Oh, it was chilly this morning.
I was going home.
I have some.
You know what, I wanted to Virginia, and I was walking the dog at 29 degrees. So of course it's relative, right? Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, my goodness.
Don't hear about the cold weather.
okay. Welcome, everybody. Did everyone have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yes, in Zoom too.
Yes, we do. Wonderful. All right, so today we're going to, hello, Stella. Today we are going to begin our, focus, shifting our focus to Hanukkah. It's right around the corner and it's wonderful to start preparing for the holiday itself. We're gonna explore the meaning of Hanukkah, the history of Hanukkah today. Next session, we're gonna study the concept of miracles. And then the final session, we're gonna study the menorah itself and light. So those will be our three sessions all together. Today, we're gonna look at some of the Talmudic understandings of what is Hanukkah. We'll explore a little bit in depth the history of the holiday itself through the lens of the rabbis. And then some quotes along the way that we will explore. But before we dive in, I want everyone to take a second and to think about your first Hanukkah memory. It shouldn't be anxiety, it shouldn't be overwhelming. So it could be, it doesn't have to be the very first. If that's too much, just a Hanukkah memory that comes to your mind first, okay? So either your first Hanukkah memory that you have, or as you sit back and just take a second to think about Hanukkah, what is that memory that comes to your mind?
I have a memory.
Okay, well, I'll go around the room. Okay, go ahead.
I grew up in a little town where actually there was about 100 Jewish families and we watched over each other. And during Hanukkah and Christmas, we deferred to the Christians and Christmas, but we had a little spot for the Hanukkah menorah. And I remember being confused as a child, like we're Jewish, but we're sort of not being openly Jewish. And I think I may have mentioned, and the men in my temple were responsible for dragging the priest out of the bar every night. So I mean, we had an interesting life growing up, but I can still see the cabinet, wooden cabinet with books or stuff in it, and on top a menorah.
Beautiful, thank you.
Growing up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, my time, we didn't celebrate Hanukkah because, you know, you don't show the people that you're Jewish. So I learned Hanukkah when I moved to the United States in
Wow.
1986. I knew because I went to Jewish school, but in my house with my parents, we didn't. So celebrating, I started celebrating here when I moved to the United States.
What was your first Hanukkah like in the States?
With friends. I know, but I lived 2 years in Israel, 82 and 83, so there we did Hanukkah with friends also.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can I ask people just to talk louder, because I lost my hearing underwater? It's just-
Susan.
Well, we had a sort of ornate but simple combination, menorah that I still have today. It broke, one of the things came off, but I still have it. I have a number today, but when my father used to like to play dreidel with us, and we played with almonds, almonds that had the shell on them. And we used to play with
Oh.
almonds.
Oh, cool, nice. Robin.
I grew up in Long Island, so a mixed neighborhood. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom We had a plastic menorah, kind of yellowish, and I remember each night she'd turn the bulb on. But that was it. There was no fussing, there was no conversation, there was no nothing, just my mother lighting the bulb each night.
We're sharing our first Hanukkah memory or a Hanukkah memory since then. Who else? Lauren, please.
It's not my, definitely not my first Hanukkah memory, but an important Hanukkah memory for me. My oldest son, who just turned 30 on Saturday, was born on Hanukkah. So I remember,
That's nice.
I guess it's in a memory also in a picture, but like a baby, it said, my first Hanukkah, and I remember my husband and I were married about 4 years, fighting the menorah, and had this little guy, you know, it was his first Hanukkah, it was spectacular. Did it one thing, it was beautiful.
Oh, that's so great. What a great memory. Liliana.
Well, I grew up in Chile and we had institution Judaism. My dad was the president.
Can you speak a little
louder? We had institutional Judaism. I never went to Hebrew school. We just went to Maccabi, to the Jewish country club. So I never celebrated there, but when I came to this country and the kids started going to Hebrew school, then I told my son that I was gonna make latkes. He said, you don't need to make them. You go to the freezer in Publix and
Oh, no.
oh, no, you have to, you know, but he was like in shock that, you know, his mom was gonna make the latkes from scratch. So, and from that day on, it's, next week is 54 years that we arrived to this country. So that's when we start celebrating.
So you were making latkes.
Yeah, my
Tradition.
knuckles are all.
Yeah, in South America, you know, the Jewish people, it was Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, and Kippur, but the holidays in between, they didn't. Unless you are Orthodox.
Anyone else want to share? Oh, great, Martha.
You brought back a memory because I have 3 boys and my father would come over and he would arrive, not with a food processor,
Oh, yeah.
by hand,
Wow.
those potatoes. And as he put them in the skillet and took them out, the boys were standing around. So after hours of doing this, there weren't many latkes left.
Those are the best ones right out of the pan.
Yeah.
Talking about latkes, my grandmother made the best latkes. I've never tasted anything like it. She put lots of meal
Oh.
as opposed to regular flour.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just, you can't find, you know, grandma's recipe.
That's right.
So I just have to interject.
Yeah.
So when anybody tells me how wonderful, and they may be the latkes here, the frozen ones, see, I always compare.
Right, you and
So
Liliana are on the
I
same
know, I
page.
just can't get excited about that, or Trader Joe's.
I get it, I get it. I get it. Judith,
I had no.
A lady.
thank you.
I had, I was 4th generation American. They did not celebrate. My family never celebrated Jewish holidays per se. And when I got married and had children, I started. And Nina. So I never did it until my children were born, and I thought it was
Thank
important.
you.
Did not get it from my family. And we had family yearly.
Okay, you don't have to whisper. I love you, Judith. Anita.
My father had a friend, his name, everybody called him Danny, but that wasn't his name. He had a Jewish name. And our families were very close. They had 3 boys and we were 2 boys and a girl. And there were a couple of other families that we all hung out together. On Hanukkah, it was Patty's job to make the potatoes. So the kids would peel the potatoes, but Patty would stand there with a hand rubbing board and hand grate mountains and mountains of potatoes, maybe 10, 15 pounds at a time. And I remember once him cutting himself as he was doing it, and a little teeny bit of blood went into the batter, the pancake batter. And I was, oh my God, you're bleeding in the pancake batter. And he said, don't tell anybody, but that's our secret sauce. A little blood.
Little blood, sweat and tears there. And Rashina.
Sorry, I'm Rashina. I don't, my name tag come in time. But my memory is also similarly not a first memory, but, just the sensory memory of like being allowed to put the candles into the menorah and not wanting them to break. Like that was just, felt like a very important responsibility to get the candles into the menorah. And the candles were always sort of like, they just broke easily. So I just always felt like there was just the right amount in the box and I wasn't careful. And that was almost like a more coveted job for me than actually lighting the candles themselves. I felt very special.
We have to stop her, Rashina, please. Anyone else want to share a memory? Oh, hi, Margaret. We're sharing our first Hanukkah memory, or a memory that comes to your mind.
Well, my mother used to decorate for Hanukkah. I mean, blue and white all over the place. And I remember really the best gift I ever got to me at the time. My grandmother gave me a little stuffed animal, had my name on the ear, Muffet, which I finally got rid of when I was probably 40. And I remember it was at school, I guess in my first grade, we were supposed to bring that favorite toy that we got for Christmas. And I bought Muffet. But it was Hanukkah.
Sweet. That's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Oh, I was interested in yours.
So it's not my first Hanukkah memory, but when I moved to Israel for rabbinical school, you know, Hanukkah at our house was always a big deal. My mom is like the latke queen. We also, she collects dreidels and menorahs, so everyone has like 4 menorahs or 5 menorahs each in the family to light. So it's like the house is ablaze in the on Hanukkah, and all the dreidels everywhere. And so Hanukkah was always like a very special, fun time at our home. When I went to Israel, what I just got such a kick out of was how everywhere you looked, there was a menorah. And one of my favorite spots was in the lotto booth. So they have these like little booths around town, around in Jerusalem. It's like where you go to buy your lottery ticket, right? And it didn't, like, there's at night, like my favorite thing during Hanukkah was I would go and I would pick a different neighborhood each night of Hanukkah and to walk around to see all the different Hanukkah. And, you know, you go to Mea Sharim, which is the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and they have outside of their homes, like on the balconies, because they're all apartments, these clear acrylic boxes that the menorahs are inside, so that it's not in a window, it's actually like out on the balcony in this box, so that it can withstand any like wind or anything like that, but it's always lit. And so that's an amazing neighborhood to walk through. And then walking down the main drag of Ben Yehuda Street, I loved in every window of every store, not just 1 or 2, every store, they would have a Hanukkah lit. And then in the little lottery booths. And I just love these little booths that are sitting around the town, that there's nobody manning them at night, but they have the Hanukkah lit. And it was just one of those things that as you're walking through, for me, it was really walking through our tradition in a real way, that the ritual
of the lighting, that the commemoration of the miracle, the idea that there is light even during times of darkness, truly came to life in a powerful way that was, for the first time was, for me, was incredibly powerful, that it wasn't just something, I wasn't lighting those menorahs, but I was walking amongst the miracle itself. You know, in the background is the site where the temple stood, and now standing in the city, in this beautiful modern city with the site of where the temple once stood, where this story took place, now all of these different Chanukah around the country are lit, representing like the true living story in and of itself. And so for me, that was that was just the absolute best Hanukkah ever. And then obviously I share your sentiment, Lauren, too. And Asher was born, his first Hanukkah. You would have thought like, you know, like of everything, right? It's just like, just to see his little face and the, you know, his menorah with his name on it, you know, like those are just such wonderful memories to have. So thank you all for sharing. We're going to dive now into what does our tradition, when we ask the question, what is Hanukkah, what does our tradition respond? That's what we're going to explore today. Let me share my screen. If you want to come get coffee, you can. Okay, so I will read because there's like a ton of, this is perfect for today. There's a lot of light, I don't know, coming towards the screen, so it's not so easy to reach. All right, so the Gemara asks, okay, the rabbis ask, the Gemara asks, the Talmud asks, what is Hanukkah? And why are lights kindled on Hanukkah? And here's the answer. The sages taught in Megillat Ta'anit on the 25th of Kislev, the Hebrew month of Kislev, which we just started on Sunday. On the 21st of Kislev, the days of Hanukkah are 8. One may not eulogize on them, one may not fast on them. What is the reason? When the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they defiled all the oils that were in the sanctuary by touching them. Before we go on, what do we take away from this first part? What do you take away from here from the Gemara? The Gemara poses a question, what is Hanukkah? And why are there lights that are kindled on Hanukkah? What's the takeaway? What stands out for you? Okay, that there's a number of days, okay, 8, what else?
That the Greeks defiled all the oils.
Okay, so that there's this defilement of the sanctuary and all the oils that were in that sanctuary, okay? What else stands out for
It's
you?
a specific time, the 25th of Kislev.
Okay, very good, right? So that's very specific, the date on the 25th of Kislev. This is when the days of Hanukkah begin, okay? Good. Anyone else have any takeaway? Very good. Okay, so now we know just from this very beginning of it, we asked, what is Hanukkah? So far, we have a few answers that are helping us get to the question, to the answer here. On the 25th, on this particular day of the Hebrew month of Kislev, 8 days from then is this period of Hanukkah. Okay, now there are things that we don't do on this holiday. We don't eulogize, and we don't fast on them. Why? What do you think? Okay. Okay, so there's happiness here. We're focusing in on this, on the notion of there's a reason we don't do these two things, fast or eulogize. There must be some reason. Okay. Then what is the reason for this? Now we're going to start to get into the reasons. So we know that the Greeks entered the sanctuary. They defiled the oils in the sanctuary by touching them. And when the Hasmonean monarchy overcame them and emerged victorious over them, they searched and found only one cruse of oil that was placed within the seal of the high priest, undisturbed by the Greeks. There was sufficient oil there to light the candelabrum for how many days? One day. And then a miracle occurred, and they lit the candelabrum from it 8 days. The next year, the sages instituted those days and made them holy days with recitation of Hallel and a special thanksgiving in prayer and blessings. So what do we know? What is Hanukkah?
Celebration.
Okay, an 8-day celebration beginning on the 25th of Kislev, right? And what do we not do? We don't fast, we don't eulogize, okay? And why? Because it is a point in time that we are focused on, that we are celebrating, that we are commemorating of this victory of the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, that we'll find out a little bit more about them. That when they came into this sanctuary that had been defiled, that all the oils had been defiled except for this one small vessel of oil. That wasn't enough to light even for one day, but it ended up staying lit for 8 days. Now, the interesting thing here is, then it takes it a step further. It then says that the following year, the sages instituted from those days this holiday. So we experienced it, right? In this particular year, we experienced overcoming that, the Greeks, that the Maccabees were victorious. We lit this candelabrum. It wasn't that we were lighting it for a particular reason, right? Just trying to have it lit because there's always a candelabra lit in the sanctuary. It didn't just last one day, it lasted 8 days. So the sages say, oh my goodness, this is something worthy of an annual commemoration. Something worthy of remembering and in placing into our institutional memory that we were victorious over our enemies here, that our sanctuary, that our temple was defiled and we were able to restore it and rededicate it and commemorate it. That then the sages, the rabbis say, now we're going to set forth from this moment forward, this particular holy day. And what makes it that particular holy day is that we're gonna recite Hallel, the special Thanksgiving prayer during this particular time. So the rabbis create a ritual. Something happens, they experience this defilement, they overcome their enemies, and then the rabbis create a ritual. Not just, oh, you will remember this day and mark it. They'll say, not only will we mark it, but we're gonna now create a ritual that we are going to engage in every year moving forward, starting on the 25th of Kislev. And right now, what we know of as the ritual is to recite Hallel and a special Thanksgiving prayer. That's what we know of first.
Where did the gift idea come up?
Much later.
What was the question?
When did the gift giving start? Susan,
So you
but we'll
said,
get to that.
you said that you don't eulogize. Define that term for me. You can still have a funeral. But
It's the actual chesed, the eulogy, the actual speaking about the memory or the legacy of the person. Now,
But you have to, when during the funeral, you talk about the person,
right,
so.
not if it's during
my
Hanukkah,
question, Yeah,
not if it's during those 8 days, is what the Talmud is
but
saying.
you still have to have a funeral.
So I believe that that's true. I have to look it up because it would say it differently if you weren't able to engage in the burial piece. There are certain times of the Jewish year that you don't bury, right? If you don't bury on Shabbat,
Sure, right.
right? So, and Hanukkah, there's not a Chag, but so I think it's just the eulogy itself. I don't think it's the burial. But I would confirm that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know where you start, but I thought that it was, a time that it was, you gave charity, that even the poorest person was given a candle for the holiday, but that was part of.
Right, so we haven't gotten to the customs yet, right? So these are customs that are gonna come afterwards. Right now, the first thing that we're just looking right now at what is Hanukkah? From the rabbi's perspective, from the very beginning, the pieces, all of that is gonna come later, and the different minhagim and traditions, which is what we're gonna spend our third session on. specifically, but this, what I find very interesting is if we just look at from the very beginning, after we overcome the Greeks and we are victorious, the Maccabees are victorious, something happens, meaning a ritual is created, a holiday is created. Remember, Chanukah is not in the Torah.
Right.
Chanukah is not in the Torah. Also, Purim is not in the Torah. Right? These are holidays that come afterwards. So what is fascinating here about what I want us to focus on in terms of Hanukkah itself is that an event takes place. The sages then say to themselves, this event is so significant that we want to memorialize this and create this as part of our annual engagement with our tradition in the form of a holiday. Okay? So what constitutes a holiday? Some ritual piece, right? And prayers. Some ritual act occurs with prayers and blessings. So the rabbis say we have to create this. This is created by the rabbis in order to commemorate and memorialize this event that happened on the 25th of Kislev.
Is it in the Apocrypha?
No, it's in the book of Maccabees, right? There's a specific book of Maccabees that
What year
There's
did
multiple.
this take place? I'm sorry, did you say it already?
not yet. So let's first look here. I want us to focus on what Rabbi Jonathan Sachs teaches here, just about this notion of this holiday. You can see religion as a battle, a holy war, in which you win a victory for your faith by force or fear. Or you can see it as a candle you light to drive away some of the darkness of the world. The difference is that the first sees other religions as the enemy. The second sees them as other candles, not threatening mine, but adding to the light we share. What Jews remembered from that victory over the Greeks 22 centuries ago was not a God of war, but the God of light. And it's only the God of light who can defeat the darkness in the human soul.
Good. Very nice.
What are some takeaways here? What stands out for you, especially when you think about what we just read from the Talmud? Where are the connections and where do you see this teaching coming to life for you?
That the light overcomes the darkness in your
You
life.
see only
Okay.
light because of darkness.
Okay,
Originally, this was a holiday that commemorated an event. It has become much more than that when you think about, light, your light can light other lights.
right, and it doesn't diminish.
Instead of a negative, it's a positive. It's not dwelling on something that, that is negative. It's looking to the bright side.
Okay,
It's dark and with light we can see.
okay, so in darkness, light illuminates our ability to see, okay? So the interesting thing, the connection here that I think is also interesting is that in the Talmud, what we're talking about is that there was some sort of a battle, right? There was this enemy, another force, right? That defiled or desecrated this sanctuary, that tried to change the way that the Jews could live in the land and practice their faith. And what Sachs is saying is you can see religion in its entirety as a battle, us versus them, a holy war in which a win for your faith has to be derived by force or fear. Or, as he suggests, you can see it as a candle you light to drive away some of the darkness of the world. And one of the ritual aspects that we have, our tradition will begin to create is this lighting of candles. In the first part of the Gemara, it just mentions the praise of Hallel and prayers and blessings as part of this ritual component. But then we're going to learn that we have to start lighting lights. We have to start to illuminate this candle, the menorah. And so you can choose to see the holiday of Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah, as an opportunity to bring light into the world, to help dispel some of the darkness. We can understand ourselves as individual candles, that when we help to light others, when we help to do good for others, when we help to build others up, or when we help to try to bridge gaps and bridge groups of people, that we become a candle that is lighting others, but the flame, our own flame, doesn't diminish. I think that's one of the powerful quotes that we learn in terms of Hanukkah, is that one person's candle, when it lights another candle, that flame doesn't decrease in light. It remains the same. Like if you think about lighting a candle and holding it, when you light the others, this light doesn't go away. It doesn't diminish. It's the same. It's that same powerful spark. So for Hanukkah, I think one of the big elements of Hanukkah is that reminder that as we light those lights, we see it as a way that the candle helps to drive away some of the darkness of the world, that by offering our own individual light, we're helping to bring more light into the world, but not at the cost of our own light. In many ways, you could make the argument that you're actually, by bringing more light into the world, you're enhancing your own light, right? So for Sachs, I think what's so powerful here is that what he focuses on is that not about the God of war, but the God of light, that this holiday is so focused on this idea of that there wasn't enough oil to last 8 nights, but it did, in fact, and the light remained constant and strong. And so the ritual component that is then adopted is, yes, you have the prayers for Thanksgiving and the blessings, but it's that every single night lighting of more light to bring more light into the world. That ritual was what was significant.
I feel like also that ending on humanity and the soul and this idea that we all possess light and dark within us. So this idea that by bringing light into the world, the darkness of the soul that might cause you to do harm to others or whatever else, by exampling, I guess, with your light, that you can, I mean, the unsaid thing that this is saying is that there's a capacity within the human soul to shift. That's how I'm interpreting the ending of that.
Yeah, I also think what's beautiful about that piece too, it's only the God of light who can defeat the darkness in the human soul. It also recognizes that each and every one of us has that capacity to carry darkness within us. And it's not just about bringing darkness out into the world always, that each of us has the ability each and every day to either dispel the light within our own self, or to enhance and grow the light within our own being, right? That's our conscious choice that we make. Now, sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's much more challenging. There are periods of time in our lives where we feel like we just can't get ourselves, our own personal selves, out of the darkness that resides within us. And so finding that light becomes more of a challenge. It becomes harder each time. Last month, the Hebrew month was Cheshvan. Cheshvan is known as Mar Cheshvan, a bitter month. There are no holidays in Cheshvan. So there's this notion that Cheshvan is a dark, bitter month. But then the next month that comes after Cheshvan is Kislev, which is a month devoted to light, bringing light into the world. So what's also interesting about Jewish time is that we basically model this story of Hanukkah even in our own Jewish life time cycle, right? So Cheshvan is a dark time, it's tough, it's hard, there's no holidays, like, oh, what are we to do as Jews if there's no holiday, right? Like, we don't know from this, we have so many holidays to deal with, right? But Cheshvan gives us this time of no holidays to really focus on what we're going to do with Kislev, which is that we are to enhance and bring light into the world. Same thing with our own souls, that there are periods of our life where we feel like we are in darkness. And yet, there's always this idea that the next month that comes, we have that ability, or that next part of our journey, to illuminate and to bring light into our own souls, which will then illuminate the world around us.
I read about that doing a mitzvah is giving light.
Sure, it's beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so let's look at the prayer. This is the prayer that we recite on Chanukah in the Amidah. It's called Al Hanisim. Nisim are miracles. So for the miracles. We are grateful for the miracles, the salvation, the mighty deeds, the victories, and the battles that you performed for our ancestors in those days at this time. In the days of Mattathias, son of Yochanan, the high priest, the Hasmonean and his sons, when the evil Greek kingdom arose against your people Israel, to make them forget your Torah and to cause them to transgress the laws that you willed. In your great mercy, you stood by them in their time of distress. You fought their struggle, judged their claim, and retaliated on their behalf. You delivered the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the impure into the hands of the pure, the evil into the hands of the righteous, and the wanton into the hands of those who are occupied with the study of your Torah. And for yourself, you made a great and sanctified name in your world. And for your nation Israel, you wrought a victory, a great victory, and deliverance even this very day. Afterwards, your children entered the precincts of your house, cleared out your sanctuary from the idols that had been placed there, purified your temple, and kindled lights in the courtyards of your holy place. And they designated these 8 days of Hanukkah to offer thanks and praise to your great name. Reflections?
There's such a balance.
Tell me.
Well, one is evil and then into the hands of righteous.
Mm.
And it goes on and on like that. It wasn't one way or another. It was always the balance. That's how I saw it.
Okay. Right? The many into the hands of the few, right? What's the imagery that's being created here? What's the imagery?
The weak over the power.
Okay. The weak over the powerful, she said.
Pure versus evil.
I'm sorry?
Pure versus the evil.
Pure versus evil, right? There's, right, there's these opposites here. Right? What's, right, so the idea that here, because remember, think about it this way, you have this big, powerful army that's coming in, and what's the story that we always tell about Hanukkah? The Maccabees, right? They're these small little groups of Judah Maccabee, right? The hammer. Judah Maccabee comes in and his 5 brothers and his father, and they overcome the big Greek army, and they restore and rededicate the temple, and we have a holiday. We have a festival to celebrate. So the prayer is focusing on the idea that you delivered the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few. Just that first, the impure into the hands of the pure. The prayer is setting up that there was this external force. They were great and powerful. And because of you, because of your help, God, you helped the small group of Israelites, of Maccabees, of Jews, were able to defeat this great foe, this great and mighty foe. But because of their trust and their faith in you, and because of their ability to fight for their right to study and to live as Jews in this minority with amongst a great majority, that they were victorious and delivered. And to this day, we continue to honor and to sanctify that memory by engaging in these rituals of celebrating of Hanukkah. This prayer we say throughout the festival, and even in the prayers for the menorah, is that we're making a statement to say that we've not always been able to live as Jews and to fulfill our responsibility and obligation to engage with our tradition, with our study of Torah, to live outwardly as Jews, as even Rosie and Liliana shared, living in South America, that the idea of lighting something, the idea of studying Torah, of identifying as Jews in a very outward-facing way was not always comfortable, not always allowed, not always celebrated, had to be quiet, right? That the holiday of Hanukkah, the sages are teaching that, you know what? we need to have this festival. There's one reason to celebrate this festival is the idea that we overcame our enemies, but there's much more to this. There's much more to this notion of Hanukkah than just the idea that we were victorious in battle. That's one element of it. But the other element was that we fought for our ability to live and practice as Jews during a time in which that was very dangerous. It was trying to be dispelled. They were trying to rid us of that ability to live proudly as Jews and to study and to worship and to engage as Jews in the way that we were meant to do. And that freedom was being taken from us. And so the sages say that this is also an important piece of this holiday that we shouldn't forget. Right? So often, if you think about when we talked about our first memories of the holiday, so many of us shared eating latkes, menorahs, dreidels, right? But there's more to the festival than that. There's more to the hot sufganiyot, right? There's more to it than that. And the sages are saying we have to make sure that that reason, that element of what is Hanukkah is not just about the celebration, although that's important, critically important, because they make a point to say that we don't do things that bring darkness, rather we're doing things only that bring light, but that there's a reason why we do this. And we'll get into the customs and the traditions later and about where we place the menorah and why. But the idea behind this is that the sages are saying this is too important to just let go by, right? The idea that we need to remember the reason why this event took place and the reason why we're memorializing it, not just 1 year after, but in perpetuity, is to remind ourselves that we weren't always, or that we're not always able to live freely as Jews. Not always, that there are times in our history and our narrative in which that becomes a friction with the larger community, with the majority community, and that friction, that challenge, that difficulty dampens the spark of Judaism that we hold within our lives. And how do we enhance it and amplify it? And that Hanukkah reminds us of our obligation to do that as well. This is not a far-fetched concept in terms of the world in which we're living. The events that we've seen, on Sunday night, we showed this powerful film, Blind Spot, about anti-Semitism on college campuses. And students talking about their Jewish star and wearing their Jewish star and not having it out, but wearing it inside, but then making the conscious decision, you know what, no, I am proud of who I am. I am gonna wear my Magen David, my Jewish star. I am gonna light my menorah, right? Like, these are conversations that are not, we don't have to dig deep into the history books to have these conversations. And one of the reasons why I thought it'd be powerful to have this series about Hanukkah, not just because it prepares us for the holiday and helps bring a little bit more meaning into our holiday celebrations, but these are also interesting conversations to have when we light the Hanukkah this year, right? That this act of lighting the Hanukkah this year is a really powerful act. A really powerful demonstration of our belief, of our faith, and of our ability to have that freedom to go and light a menorah and to place it in our window. Right? Thank God we live in a place where we feel like we can put that menorah outside of our window. Jews around the world today, that's not necessarily the case. Right? And we don't have to dig deep to find examples of that or people's fears about that, which are valid. Right? It's not to diminish or dampen their fears, it's to validate the fears. So much so that the tradition is talking about that. That the reason why we do this is because we recall the time in which we couldn't put that menorah out. So when we think about, and we'll talk about modern and interesting customs and traditions of how we can enhance our Hanukkah experience together, but one of the things I've been thinking about this year is directly related to this the what is Hanukkah piece, because now my child is old enough, he's 4, right? He's old enough to start talking a little bit more in depth about the story. And for me, the story that we teach or that we tell or that we received as kids is a really sweet, wonderful story, right? It's lovely, it's cool. Everyone wants to be Judah Maccabee, like that's cool. It's great to have powerful representation for our children to look up to and to admire. But what more can this story be? And what is my responsibility as a parent to share and to, what is the message or the story that I want to offer to my child, that Hanukkah can mean something more, than the sweet rituals that we do, the dreidel and the sufganiyot and the latkes and all those things, but like there is something more to it that I think is significant to start having those conversations with our children, even at the sweet little age of 4. Because it's also important for us as adults to think about, what does this Hanukkah mean? What does this holiday mean for me? When I'm lighting this light on the first night, what is my soul connection to that first candle? And then in the second night, what is my connection to that second light? The third, the fourth, the fifth, this is right? Like, these are things to think about. What does it mean to actually light this menorah? How many people think about it when they light the menorah? Do you think, what is the meaning behind this light?
Not one.
Not one, thank you, Martha, right? Not one,
No.
right? And that's, and not one, you know, it's, we do it, right? We do it, and there's a blessing.
I have a very, I guess I took it from synagogue in Virginia. And it had, the first light recognizes this,
Mhm.
the next light, this one represents something else. So we've always had that, and it's sweet, each child, each person say that for the candles each night.
That's a beautiful ritual.
What else it means, I could bring it in.
Used to distribute the special prayer for that idea every night. I don't know how many years ago they stopped doing it, and maybe it's just because my kids have through Sunday school.
Right.
But that would be something that would be great to
Yeah.
reinstitute.
Yeah.
So that people can understand what each night's light is.
Yeah, and the nights can change. The beauty of Hanukkah is that there, for that particular ritual, there is no set in stone. The first night is the first night. There is no theme to that, each of those nights. They can change. What's beautiful about that is that they can change as a result of the time in which we're living. Or what is the meaning behind this, or thematically, what is the meaning behind this that I want to bring to light, literally bring to light this night on Hanukkah. So that's something I want us to start thinking about through the next 2 weeks that we need, are what are some themes and ideas and experiences that you would like to highlight when you light the lights this year? And how do we say that out loud, and how do we share that with the people around us? Okay, so the book of Maccabees, in this, written in Hebrew around the 120 BCE, 50 years after the event, describes it this way. Then Judah said to his brothers, Judah Maccabee, behold, our enemies are crushed. Let us go up to cleanse the sanctuary and dedicate it. So all the army assembled, and they went up to Mount Sion. And they saw the sanctuary desolate, the altar profaned, the gates burned. In the courts they saw bushes sprung up in a thicket, or as one on the mountains. They saw also the chambers of the priests in ruins. Then they rent their clothes and mourned with great lamentation, and sprinkled themselves with ashes. They fell face down on the ground and sounded the signal on the trumpets and cried out to heaven. Then Judah detailed men to fight against those in the citadel until he had cleansed the sanctuary. He chose blameless priests devoted to the law, and they cleansed the sanctuary and removed the defiled stones to an unclean place. They deliberated what to do about the altar of burnt offering, which had been profaned, and they thought it best to tear it down, lest it bring reproach upon them, for the Gentiles had defiled her. So they tore down the altar and stored the stones in a convenient place on the temple hill until there should become a prophet to tell them what to do. They celebrated the dedication of the altar for 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness. They offered a sacrifice of celebration and thanksgiving. They decorated the front of the temple with golden crowns and small shields. They rededicated the gates and the chambers for the priests and furnished them with doors. There was a very great gladness among the people, and the reproach of the Gentiles was removed. Then Judah and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at the season, the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with gladness and joy for 8 days, beginning with the 25th day of the month of Kislev. So Rambam says, for this reason, the sages of that generation instituted that these 8 days, beginning on the 25th day of Kislev, are to be days of rejoicing and praise to God. We're to kindle lights at evening time at the entrances to our houses on each of these 8 nights in order to show and reveal the miracle. Okay? So in the Talmud it says, the sages taught that the basic mitzvah of Hanukkah is each day to have a light kindled by a person. Okay, so here's the next part of the ritual, right? So we have prayers for Thanksgiving, the Hallel. We have the recognition that it begins on the 25th of Kislev, the 8 days, and now we get to the next part of the ritual, is that each day to have a light kindled by a person. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, they disagree as to the nature of that adjustment. Beit Shammai says, on the first day, one kindles 8 lights. And from there on, gradually decreases the number of lights until on the last day of Hanukkah, he kindles 1 light.
That's different.
Beit Hillel says, on the first day, one kindles 1 light. And from there on, gradually increases the number of lights until on the last day, he kindles 8 lights. Okay? Right? So there's a disagreement between these two. Siri wants to understand what I want to say. She doesn't get it, so let's explain it. Okay, so Shammai says what? On the first night, you light all 8, and every night from there, you decrease by a candle. Beit Hillel says, no. On the first night, you light 1 candle, and you gradually increase the candles every night. So obviously, which house are we following?
Well,
Beit Hillel, okay?
but you can
So-
see with that lighting 8, because they had the oil.
Right,
And diminishing each night, the amount of oil got smaller and smaller, and it was still the miracle. So you can understand his point of view, even though we don't.
you're such a Talmudist, look at you, okay? Right, so yeah, sure, you could be a Beit Shammai, I think that's a great idea. Actually, 2 years ago, I challenged people, to do it both ways. To have a menorah dedicated to Beit Shammai and have a menorah dedicated to Beit Hillel, and then reflect on the experience. What was it like for you? What was it like to have those candles in that way? What was the experience increasing the light? What was the experience decreasing the light? And then reflect on what it felt like for you. Here the Talmud continues. One said that the reason for Beit Shammai's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the incoming days, the future. On the first day, 8 days remain in Hanukkah. 1 kindles 8 lights, and on the second day, 7 remain, 1 kindles 7. Okay. The reason for Beit Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights corresponds to the outgoing days. Each day, the number of lights corresponds to the number of the days of Hanukkah that were already observed. The reason for Hillel's opinion is that, okay, so here's the important takeaway. The reason for Beit Hillel's opinion is that the number of lights is based on the principle. One elevates to a higher level in matters of sanctity and does not downgrade.
Love it.
So Beit Hillel, and one of the reasons why the custom goes by Hillel is that the idea is that we should be increasing in light. Right? That we elevate to a higher level of sanctity, we don't downgrade. So we increase the light each night as opposed to decreasing the light each night.
Are there people that do it the other way?
You know, I don't know for like, maybe there are, maybe there isn't, but in terms of like an overall practice, we follow Beit Hillel on this particular case. But like 2 years ago, like I said, like I asked people to try it and see how it feels for them. But in terms of like overall tradition, we follow Beit Hillel on this particular case.
And every year I Google, is it left to right or right to left?
I'm glad you
How
do.
many times Shabbat ever won?
I'm sorry?
I'd like to know how many times that, Shemai won.
Oh,
It's one or two.
it's like, yeah, it's very minor, most of the time, most times Beit Hillel's opinion is the majority opinion. So I put this quote on here from Einstein, that there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. I leave us with that because next week we'll be talking about miracles. And one of the things I want you to think about is, from now until next week, be consciously aware of the little daily miracles in your life. You can live as though nothing is a miracle. And the other way you can live is as though everything is a miracle. Oh my gosh, Anita, hello.
Wait,
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. Anita just came out of the screen. And it's 1 PM. Oh my gosh, okay, all right, so for next Tuesday, we're gonna be focusing on miracles. I want you to be consciously aware this week of illuminating the daily miracles, the little miracles in your life. We are going to take a conscious practice of living as if everything is a miracle. I want us to try that over this next week, so that when we highlight miracles with Chanukah, that we are also integrating what it means to experience a miracle in our everyday lives today.
I have a question.
Yes.
When is Shabbat, what candle do you light first, Shabbat or Hanukkah?
What do you think?
Because of the timing,
What do you
Shabbat.
think? Okay, so it's not necessary, so the timing, yes, light, no, what did you say?
Shabbat.
Okay. No, you light,
Shabbat is the most important.
okay, you guys are great, these are all lovely answers, but here's the answer. What are you not supposed to do on Shabbat?
Light candles.
So you're not supposed to
That's
make the
right.
flame, so what do you think you have to do first?
First Hanukkah.
And then Shabbat, because once
That's
you
right.
light Shabbat.
That's right. Yes.
See? It's a miracle.
That's right.
That's interesting.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
you light your Hanukkah candle. All right, my friends, and then we'll understand why, because there's lots to do with the candle lighting, with the candles themselves and their purpose, but that is for another session. All right, so we talked about what is Hanukkah. We understand it from the perspective of the rabbis. Next week, we're gonna dive into miracles, and you're going to think about your miracles over the next week. All right, my friends.
Thank you.
Yeah.